Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Erik Johansson. I'm a teacher and tutor with LSAT Demon. With me is LSAT Demon student Madison, who just crushed the LSAT, is on her way to some fabulous law school, I'm sure. But Madison, congratulations, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So, quick intro. Tell us how you did. Where was it? Maybe just where was it that you started, and what is it that you just scored on the official LSAT?
Yeah, so my first ever score was a 147. I took that when I was a junior in college, and I guess for reference, I'm now 2.5 years or 3 years now, maybe out of college. And I just got a 179, so pretty big difference. I will say that when I took it the first time, I had not studied. I don't really know what I was thinking, but I think you do well on the SATs when you're younger and you kind of think you're like invincible with standardized testing, which is not the case for the LSAT. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm really happy with my score now. So
Yeah, 179. I should hope so. No, it's amazing work. The 147, did you say that was an official test that you took with zero study?
yeah, yeah. So I don't know.
How was that experience?
Well, that was in person because it was like that was a long time ago. So that was pre-COVID. And I remember it was at like one of those big like conference centers or something. And I think it almost helped that I had no idea what I was doing. Like there were people pacing outside the room, like last minute studying. And I remember I think I like showed up with like a bag of goldfish or something. I was like I'm ready to take this test. So it's on my record. I, to be quite honest, don't know how that affects me, but it was 3 years ago. So
Yeah, I think your 179 will more than outshine the 147. You're gonna be you're gonna be okay. Okay, so interesting experience, I'm sure. 147 on an official test for your also cold diagnostic, I guess. After that happened, after that experience, you must have realized, well, maybe I should study if I want to get a score that's going to put me into a great school. So, yeah, what was your study process? Because I guess you've been at it for a couple years now. So, was it like immediately you jumped in or you took a little break? How did that go?
yeah, I took a little break, and then I kind of got back into it senior year of college, and I was also a senior in college, and it was like I think the second year of COVID or around that time, and so there was a lot happening, and I didn't put my full heart into it. I don't think I used any program. I think I was kind of Googling things and I would report to my mom that I was studying, but in reality, I actually wasn't studying. You kind of know yourself and you know when you're dedicating yourself to something. And it was more of like a side quest at that time. And then I knew I wanted to take some time off after college to work because just all of the advice that I had gotten from people was, especially for grad school and law school, it's a financial commitment, it's a time commitment. You want to be sure that that's what you want to do. And so I was fortunate enough to get a job as a paralegal at a great firm in DC, and it was a great experience, but it was a lot of work. So I didn't have the hours, which I know a lot of people relate to. I didn't really have the hours in the day or maybe a better way of phrasing it is I couldn't prioritize that as much as I wanted to.
Sure.
So studying was on pause, honestly, until May of this past year. And that's when I got my LSAT Demon subscription, I believe.
So that was after you wrapped up your paralegal gig.
Yes, yes. I finished and it was great. It was a perfect amount of time, 2 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I feel so fortunate to have been able to kind of I didn't make studying my full-time job, but of course, I didn't have the pressures of school or a job while I was studying, which is like that's not a given. And I feel so like I know that that made a huge difference, and I feel so
Hmm.
fortunate to have had that. So
Yeah, absolutely. So May of this year, you transitioned out of your paralegal job and started focusing on the LSAT. We don't recommend that people study 8 hours a day full time, but it's like you said, really nice if you don't have to worry about other things. But so when you were fully focused on the LSAT, what does your study look like? Like, how much were you doing per day? What types of things were you doing over the course of a week?
yeah, it definitely was like a learning curve because I had this like expectation in my head that I was going to wake up every day and hit the books and, like that was going to be great. And I had told enough people that I was like taking the test that I was like, oh, like this
Mm,
kind of has to go well. Like I put that pressure on myself, and I quickly learned that, that's not the best approach. I think I started out with the free Demon subscription, or maybe the most basic level, and then I just kind of eased my way into it and would like sit down at my desk and be like, okay, like we're gonna do 30 minutes, we're gonna do an hour, and just worked my way up. And everybody has different learning styles, and everybody thrives under different conditions. And I think for me, it was kind of telling myself every day that like, oh, you're choosing to do this, and like this is actually like you're in a really unique part of your life where you don't have that many other responsibilities, and like that's cool, and you should be excited to kind of solve this puzzle like
hmm.
in the biggest way. So but that being said, i I put off taking the official test for kind of some time. I think I ramped up my studying. Like if there were a line graph, it would be like, I don't know, like those perfect graphs where it's like every
Sure.
month the studying increased and it started to feel more real. And then I would say, I was doing maybe some days 3 hours, some days 2 hours, which is substantial, but I also am like a lingerer. Like I linger on things, like I ruminate. And so I would be like, I would do a question and then I would sit there and I would be like, all right, like I would, it wasn't like super fast speed. I was really
Sure.
taking my time and trying to
Yeah.
understand everything because I have a little bit of that like compulsive
Uh huh.
tendency in me. So,
Well, it's very lawyerly, I think, and it's a good thing to have in review.
mhm.
I If you scored a 179, it means that you did not ruminate, as you say, any longer on the test when the clock was
Oh,
ticking.
yes.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that's a difficult distinction for many students to get through is when it is that you can move fast and when it is that you don't need to overthink it. So, was that a learning process for you? And how did you kind of get to that point where you knew when it was you didn't need to think any harder about this answer choice or this question?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point and a good distinction. When I was doing time sections and drilling, I would try not to ruminate. And of course, the time test. But when I was just like, like, let me do some LSAT, like I would kind of like pick a problem and then just like examine it. But no, it's something I struggled with a lot. And actually, when I was trying to think about what I would say on this podcast, I remember like a few weeks before I took the September LSAT test, I was in a class with Ala, and I never really like, I'm not a very vocal, I wasn't a very vocal class participant. Everyone has different learning styles, and that's not mine. But I stayed after class and I asked her a question, and I was like, I like reading. Like I don't know what, I don't seem to be getting through the passages in a timely way. And when I dedicate the time, as you all say, which is so necessary, I'm missing things like, I can't win. And she said something that I remembered, and she was like, take the time that you need, not the time that you want. And so if it were up to me, I would spend like a month reading like one LSAT passage, and that's not feasible. And I think that really struck a chord with me. Yeah, and also just like, you aren't ready to take the official test if when you're doing your practice test, you're having like you're getting caught up in it, and you're in your head, and you're second guessing, like at least for me, which I know I can be a little extreme sometimes. And so maybe if I had taken it a month earlier, it would have been fine. But I knew, to satisfy myself, I was like, I want to feel like I know what's going on. But it didn't feel like that the whole time. Like, there were questions on the test where I was like, oh God, but you do what you can do, and you move on, and you trust that the foundation that you built is strong enough to kind of carry you through when you don't have the time to ponder, I guess.
Yeah. What was the line? Take the time you need, not the time you want.
Yeah.
That's very, very well said. Big props to Alla for that one. Alla teaches a few classes here at the Demon. Really excellent teacher. Okay, you also mentioned some external pressures that come from telling everybody, your friends, your families, that you're taking the test, that you're studying for the LSAT, that you're going to go to law school, you're going to be a lawyer. I know that there are tons of listeners and other students out there who feel those same external pressures. Talk a little bit, if you're comfortable, about just what that felt like, what that meant, and how you got over it.
Yeah. Well, I think like in a perfect world, I wouldn't have told anybody, but I was, I, my paralegal job was for 2 years. Like, that was kind of, under, like, I could have stayed longer, of course, but that was kind of my agreed upon time frame. And I was like, at that point, if I know I want to go to law school, then I'll know. And so when I was saying goodbye to everyone, they're like, what's next? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm studying for the LSAT. So it was like, I did not probably need to say that, of course, but I felt in that moment like sharing what I was embarking on.
Yeah, of course.
But I think at the same time, like, I really had to make a conscious effort every time I started like spiraling, and was like, well, what will people think? And what if it doesn't go well? And I mean, like, that's all self-inflicted. Like, nobody was gonna like look at me and like think any less of me if I decided, oh, hey, like, maybe this isn't for me, actually. Like, maybe I did get a good score, but that's not what I want to do. Or maybe I did not get a good score, and that's still not what I want to do. No one's really thinking about you as much as you're thinking about yourself. And I am lucky enough to have parents that at every step of the way reminded me that, like, you're not this test. Like, I grew to really like it. So they were like, okay, first of all, maybe stop talking about it so much, but also like, you're not how you perform on the test. And it's true. It's just another thing.
That's excellent. I think that'll resonate with a lot of people. Okay, you mentioned you did come to really like the test. What about this test do you love?
Well, I don't know. I really like solving things. I don't know. I like puzzles. I remember I've had a lot of free time on my my hands, so I've been listening to podcasts and everything. And I remember one of the podcast episodes, this was before I took the test, where maybe one of you all said something about, like, if you're waiting in the airport or something, and you want to pull out a logic game, like, and do it, like, that's when you know that you're maybe ready to take the test. And I was like, like, I kind of feel that way. But yeah, I think you kind of get into a rhythm, and it's rewarding because what you get isn't always like proportionate to what you put into it, but when you pass a certain threshold, you really do start seeing results. And if you're sitting down and you're doing game after game after game, you're gonna get better. Like I think that's kind of like maybe maybe in some universe you wouldn't, but I think more likely than not you're gonna improve. And so having this challenge where you're seeing tangible results, and yeah, I mean it's a little addicting, the rush of like doing
Sure.
something right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and just because doing something right, becoming good at something that which was a challenge before, and also, like you said, solving these puzzles, whether it's the games or the word puzzles of LR, a lot of fun for sure. You mentioned, so it sounds like you were a pretty strong reader to begin with, if I'm remembering correctly. Was games the hardest for you when you started?
Yeah, games was definitely my weakest area of the test, and I don't really know how people do it without worlds, but I'm sure there are people out there like whose brain works a certain way and you can see something like that and it's not crazy, but yeah, that wasn't me. So I made worlds and I really worked on it until it felt comfortable. And I think one thing that really helped me too was like I'm a very visual person, and so I need things to be spatially organized in a way that like makes sense. And so Matt, I don't think teaches with you all anymore, but he said something that really helped, which was like you need to figure out spatially like how you're gonna like the game board or whatever you want to call it could be the same, but if you're splitting your worlds horizontally versus vertically, like that could make a difference for you. And
Mm-hmm.
um this I don't know, this is very I feel like this is very
No, it's
specific, but
it is it's an important lesson, and it's I think a lot of that is really personal, right? Visualizing it the way that works for you.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So you started with a 147 as your official test cold diagnostic years ago. Got serious about your LSAT study spring of this year. Did you just take it one more time, or was it multiple test attempts this year?
Oh yeah, this year just once. I I was signed up to take it in August, and a week before the test, I kind of had like a gut feeling that like it wasn't the right test. I don't know, like maybe it would have been fine, but I think you just know yourself and you know kind of like because also so much of it is mental too. Like at some point you possess the knowledge that you're gonna possess. Like you're not learning anything substantially new, but you have to kind of connect the dots in your head a certain way. And I knew at that point that I hadn't done enough of the timed sections yet. And I decided like a week before to, which I know it's, not everybody has the luxury of doing that. And I felt so like fortunate that that wasn't, that I could do that and that it was okay. And it wasn't the end all be all that I take the test that I signed up for that month. And I can't remember, I was already signed up for September as like a fail safe, but I don't know if I would not have canceled the test had I not known I could take it in September. I don't, I'm not sure how the timeline works out on that, if I still
Mm-hmm.
would have had time to sign up again. Um, but yeah, I just kind of felt like it wasn't right. And I'm really glad I did that because best case scenario, it went well, but worst case scenario, I didn't do well. And that's the issue isn't even the score. It's just like what that would have done to me mentally, I think,
Mm.
going into the next test. I really didn't want to kind of fool with that. But all of that is to say that you, again, I think it kind of harkens back to Allah's saying, like, take the time you need, not the time you want. Like, but I also know you guys very much are proponents of like don't have a timeline and don't let application cycles dictate when you take the test. So, both are true. If there are extenuating circumstances that make it so that you really need to take it at a certain date, then maybe don't be as like, I don't want to say superstitious, but don't be as, caught up in your own head. But
yeah, for sure. There's a balance to it. Absolutely. You don't want to take the test before you're ready. And if something in you was telling you that you weren't ready, then it was right to listen to it. But once you're ready, at a certain point, delaying it further is not really because you aren't ready for the test, but has to do with something else that you're feeling, whether it's nerves or just probably nerves. So no, it sounds like you approached it well, and when you took it, you scored a 179. Did you feel really good while you were taking it? Did you even notice that you were doing really well while you were taking the test? Like, what can you remember about the experience of test day?
Well, I did it at a test center, which I was very adamant about doing. But I've heard that this most recent sign up cycle, there are like less test centers. So I feel happy that it worked out that way. But I don't know. My mom drove me, and I remember we were just kind of trying to make light of the situation a little, like, it's stressful, but it's a test. Like, I remember we were like kind of, I don't know, she was making fun of me for something when we were like, I'm a 24-year-old, and like she drove me to the test, and she was waiting in line with me as I signed in. I was like, you don't need to do that. But but I don't know. I kind of went into it like happy and with a clear mind, and I knew that, if it didn't work out, it was okay. There was another time. And I remember feeling really good about the reading comprehension. And I was like, oh, wow, like, that's not a given. Like, that's, that could change any test you take, kind of, because, yeah. So, well, to an extent. So I felt really good about that. And then I had like double LR. So I was like, I don't know. I feel good about both of these. I feel better about one of them, but
Sure.
Who knows? And then games really like killed me. I thought, like, I walked away from that test. I mean, it's interesting because my like gut reaction was like, okay, yeah, that went well. But then I was like thinking about it, and I was like, oh no, like it was a disaster.
And,
yeah. Which sounds dramatic, and I think everyone knows themselves, and everyone knows kind of, if your go-to is to like catastrophize things, then you probably shouldn't trust that little voice. But no, I didn't know one way or the other. I was hoping for a mid 170s, but that seemed like, it didn't seem unattainable, but I was like, that would be awesome. Like,
it's a good example of, or it's a good illustration of why you shouldn't generally cancel your score, because a lot of people jump to catastrophe and second guess their performance, and maybe they actually scored a 179. So no, you kept your head on your shoulders. You recognize that you did do well, and it paid off. Well, cool. Well, Madison, it was so great to chat with you and to hear about your journey. Thanks for coming on. If you could leave our listeners and current LSAT students with maybe one big piece of advice, what would it be?
It's a big question. I think it would be to like learn to enjoy the test, because that's when you don't resent studying for it. And that's when like psychologically things will just start clicking, I think that was the biggest turning point, probably.
Enjoy the test. Yeah, that's great. Thanks again, Madison. It was really great having you on.
Thank you for having me.
Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.